Okay. Good morning. September 11th. Habit is stronger than reason. George Santayana. Loving or despising ourselves becomes habitual, and habits, as all living things, are in the business of staying alive. When habits are attacked, they put up immediate, heroic defenses. All habits do this. The healthy ones as well as the not-so-healthy ones. Thus, a habitual self-despairer or despiser who attempts radical change can expect plenty of resistance. There's no other way it could be. In the midst of our efforts to bolster self-image, if these efforts go against a long-held habit of self-defeat, all of a sudden we may find ourselves thinking, I have a right to be any way I want to be, or this self-renewal stuff is all fantasy. I am what I am, and it will always be that way. Self-pity often rears its ugly head in defense of old habits. This ingrained spoiler may seductively tell us, poor me, I had it so bad growing up. I have an excuse for not trying. Or, I just wasn't born with many gifts. Other people have a much easier time than I, so if I try to be better, I will only fail. Old habits die hard. Resistance is to be expected, seen for what it is, and counter-resisted. Self-pity and despair are the bodyguards of long-enthroned habits. Self-pity and despair are the bodyguards of long-enthroned habits. When I was so I had my first bout of major chronic depression when I was a teenager. And I was bullied for being overweight. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to change the weight thing. I wanted to lose weight. But I found myself having to go up against a lot of negative self-talk about my self-worth, about how likable I was as a person anyway. There is no point because I'm still a terrible or unlikable human being. All of this stuff. And before I could engage in the actions to change the way I looked and felt, I had to first spend time systematically going through my head and being aware of every negative thought that came up and then countering that thought with something positive, which at first, positivity itself was really hard, so the best I could do was realistic. So when my head said, or the voice of my head said, well, I'm just like a fat piece of crap anyway, or, I'm just the fattest person I know, or something like that, just like terrible thoughts. I'd have to go through, and so for the realistic thing, so being realistic, I'd be like, well, actually, and then I would find somebody that I knew in my own head to compare myself to, regardless of age or age. Sometimes it was peers, sometimes it was people at church, or, whatever. I would have to go through and find people like, well, that person weighs more than you, and they've got friends, Caroline, so. Or when I would tell myself that I was ugly, I'd have to be like, well, you've seen people with hair lips on TV. Not that people with hair lips are ugly, but I was a teenager, and I found the idea of deformities to be diminishing of aesthetic appeal, because everything that I had read about beauty said that symmetry and perfection were what beauty was, which, as an adult, no. There are plenty of really beautiful people. Like the woman who was apparently voted the ugliest woman in the world, because that's a thing that people want to vote on. She's a really cool and, beautiful human being if you actually look beyond the... and I'm not saying look behind how she looks, so the people who post those kind of statistics, they just show the worst photos ever, but if you actually watch her videos and watch her speak, she's gorgeous. So people are weird, but aesthetic value within a patriarchal capitalist society is weird in and of itself. And so a lot of that had a lot to do with my standards of beauty as a teenager and why I wasn't able to feel beautiful, and I had to go through and counter those thoughts by comparing myself to other people who society also said wasn't beautiful, and recognizing that those human beings actually did have happy lives, so I could too, is essentially where I was going with this. I had to go through and reteach my brain how not to constantly go to the worst case scenario about my worth as a human being based on just outside thoughts or images that had gotten in, or things that I had experienced that my brain then translated to just like the worst thoughts possible. So before I could make any major change towards becoming the person that I wanted to be, first I had to change my brain in the way that I thought about myself in the first place. And it's the literal fake it till you make it kind of stuff. As an adult, when I had my second major bout of depression, I had to go back and go through all of the thoughts that I had picked up again in my youth from verbally abusive people in my life, and do it again as an adult. And then when I was recovering from alcoholism, I had to go through and do it again with the reprogramming of thoughts around now the way that I felt about myself because of the things that I had done while I was drinking. I had to go through and just like pick it apart and remind myself that, like, no, actually, I'm not the worst person in the world. No, actually, I'm not a worthless human being. And it's always better when you provide assistance. So if you can have some sort of like, I had to have examples to back it up, which I can't go into specifics right now. It was like years ago, so I don't really remember. But then recently in life coaching, my life coach gave me a more feelings-based way of learning how to reprogram my feelings using the thought process. And it's a whole system. But yeah, self-pity and despair are the bodyguards of long-enthroned habits, and self-pity and despair are themselves long-enthroned habits. So you have to face those and then work through those. Even if you can't get rid of the feeling, you have to learn to change the thoughts so that eventually you can change the feeling. And that's like the first step towards making actual physical change in habits and lifestyle, and towards becoming the kind of person that you want to be. And it's hard. It's so hard. Because we are not our brains. Our brains are just a filtration tool, and but we've learned to associate who we are with our brains, and even the process of separating the self from the mind is hard because the brain wants to stay in control. Self-pity and despair are the bodyguards of long-enthroned habits, and the brain itself is the gatekeeper. It's exhausting. But it's worth it. It's so much worth it. Like, I feel there's a reading a couple weeks ago, I am not now what I was, and I'm not now what I was. I am still who I would have been if I was allowed to choose. Like, I would be this person I am today, but I'm not the person that I used to be. And a lot of it is because of the brain game. The learning to train my own brain, and then once I hit walls where I can't do it by myself anymore, getting help, training my brain to function as a healthy tool as opposed to just a scared tool in survival mode meant to keep me safe, because eventually those habits aren't necessary anymore as your life changes, and sometimes the habits that we use to keep ourselves safe end up negatively contributing to the way that our lives are going now. Self-pity and despair are the bodyguards of long-enthroned habits. Yep. That's it. I'm going to go make coffee and get ready for my day. Have a good morning. Hi. It is my genuine hope that you got something positive out of this video, and if you did, I would really appreciate it if you liked the video, maybe shared it with somebody you know, and then subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a good day.